Good morning, again. I'm Pam Schuman, the lay service leader for today. For those of you who don't know me, I've been a member of Horizon for almost 30 years now, and I'm delighted to have been the flower lady for almost as long. So as you might imagine, the flower communion service is always special to me. Toward the end of the service, we'll talk more about how this unique UU celebration of communion came to be. This year, we're also celebrating it on June 24th. That's Midsummer's Day, a date that used to coincide with the summer solstice, the one we just had a few days ago, but they changed the calendars in the 18th century in Protestant Europe, and that caused the solstice to fall a few days earlier. Midsummer's Eve and Day are still celebrated in parts of Europe and are associated with festivities, fairies, dancing, roses. Think of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. And young women scattering rose petals to have whomever will be their true love come to them. So today is a day of flowers, of lightheartedness, love, and fellowship, a whole bouquet of blessings. We have been exploring this concept of blessing throughout June. Yet blessing or being blessed can be difficult for some of us UUs, steeped as those words are in centuries of heavily religious connotations that may not feel comfortable or appropriate for us to express. But why forego such a wonderful concept? Why can't these just be other ways of saying something that is good, as they have always been, something that's good? Things that provide, things like providing a kind deed for a loved one or a stranger, feeling the warm fuzziness of our pet, admiring the velvety petals of a magnificent rose, having a working air conditioner. So then, if a blessing is a good thing to give or receive, is a curse its opposite? Something bad or evil? Something sad or distressing? Surely we see and experience bad things, cursed things, sad and tragic things on a daily basis. The air conditioner stops working on a 100-degree day. The 17-year-old pet who is suffering and must be euthanized. A parent who loses a child, or a child who loses a parent. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of small and huge curses to the point where we go blind to blessings anywhere, either in our own lives or in our society or on our planet. Take this beautiful rose, for example. Let's see if I can work this. I've got it the wrong way. Okay. Beautiful rose. Color, shape, fragrance, and what a blessing it is. But ouch, that hurt. Yes, roses come with thorns. An evolutionary blessing for roses, it seems, to keep them from being eaten. But botanically speaking, a rose really only has prickles. All those little things are prickles on a rose. And that just gives us a little pain, the equivalent of a paper cut. And the prickles, only skin deep on the rose itself, are easy for us to quickly get rid of. We just pop them off. And they're easy for us to forget that way. So just minor annoyances, little curses. It's when we get to real thorns, and you've probably seen some like that, like on these lovely bougainvillea vines. Bougainvilleas have thorns that are that long, and if you've ever been stung by one, you'll know. You can't forget it. And that's when the hurt gets deeper and harder to heal from. And sometimes, in addition to prickles and thorns, oops, what did I do? I did something here. There we go. Sometimes we have what's called spines, and that's what we find on cactus. These are the massive curses of life, grievously painful to body and mind, ongoing, draining happiness from our whole being. How do we live when the spines pierce us? In today's quote, 19th century Irish writer Oscar Wilde remarks, "What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise." More completely, the quote reads, "I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us to be bitter trials are often blessings in disguise." Bitter trials, curses, prickles, thorns, and spines are more than just sources of pain, and even in the midst of them, we can find blessings. Let us see how we can open ourselves to more blessing as we join in communion on this Midsummer's Day. Come, let us worship together.
Scientists believe that your brain has a built-in negativity bias. In other words, as we evolved over millions of years dodging sticks and chasing carrots, it was a lot more important to notice, react to, and remember sticks than it was for carrots. That's because in the tough environments in which our ancestors lived, if they missed out on a carrot, they usually had a shot at another one later on. But if they failed to avoid a stick, a predator, a natural hazard, or aggression from others of their species, wham, no more chances to pass on their genes. In effect, the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones. That shades implicit memory, your underlying expectations, beliefs, action strategies, and mood in an increasingly negative direction. And that's just not fair, since probably most of the facts in your life are positive or neutral. Every day, lots of good things happen, such as a lovely sunset, someone is nice to you, you finish a batch of emails, or you learn something new. Besides the sheer injustice of it, acquiring a big pile of negative experiences in implicit memory banks naturally makes a person more anxious, irritable, and blue. Plus, it makes it harder to be patient and giving toward others. In evolution, Mother Nature only cares about passing on genes by any means necessary. She doesn't care if we happen to suffer along the way, from subtle worries to intense feelings of sorrow, worthlessness, or anger, or to create suffering for others. The result is a brain that is tilted against lasting contentment and fulfillment. But you don't have to accept this bias. By tilting toward the good in the practical sense of that which brings more happiness to oneself and more helpfulness to others, you merely level the playing field. You'll still see the tough parts of life. In fact, you'll become more able to change them or bear them if you tilt toward the good, since that will help put challenges in perspective, lift your energy and spirits, highlight useful resources, and fill up your own cup so you have more to offer others. And now, tilted toward absorbing the good, instead of positive experiences washing through you like water through a sieve, they'll collect in implicit memory deep down in your brain. In the famous saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. The more you get your neurons firing about positive facts, the more they'll be wiring up positive neural structures.
And our second reading today comes from a Franciscan friar, Richard Rohr, and this is from Native and Celtic Spirituality, Original Blessing. Yet another gift of Native and Celtic spirituality is their unashamed welcome of some kind of original blessing instead of starting with a problem like original sin. Pelagius, one of the early Christian Celtic writers, opposed the doctrine of original sin coined by his contemporary Augustine. Pelagius saw that beginning with a negative, original sin would damage rather than aid spiritual development. Beginning with the positive instead of a problem is the healthiest and most hopeful way to find wholeness. The Celts saw creation as good and as a theophany, that is, a revelation of God's very being, just as Genesis had taught. Minister and Celtic scholar Philip Newell writes, Eutrengia, a 9th century Irish teacher, says that if goodness were extracted from the universe, all things would cease to exist. For goodness is not simply a feature of life, it is the very essence of life. Goodness gives rise to being, just as evil leads to non-being or to a destruction and denial of life's sacredness. According to Newell, Pelagius stressed not only the essential goodness of creation and our capacity to glimpse what he called the shafts of divine light that penetrate the thin veil dividing heaven and earth, but very specifically, the essential goodness of humanity. Those who live in close proximity to the natural world seem to come to know the universe as benevolent much more easily, despite its inherent violence and changeability. This belief leads to very different values than when your whole worldview begins with a theological or moral problem to be solved. World religions teacher Houston Smith describes primal people as oriented in a single cosmos which sustains them like a living womb. Because they assume that it exists to nurture them, they have no disposition to challenge it, defy it, refashion it, or escape from it. It is not a place of exile or pilgrimage, though pilgrimage takes place within it. Primal people are concerned with the maintenance of personal, social, and cosmic harmony. But the overriding goal of salvation that dominates the historical religions is virtually absent from them. Genesis began with 6 clear statements of original blessing or inherent goodness, and the words original sin are not in the New Testament. Yet the church became so preoccupied with the fly in the ointment, the flaw in the beauty, that we forgot and even missed out on an original blessing. So I call today's sermon and service a bouquet of blessings, a rose by any other name. So you may remember in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, star-crossed lover Juliet wistfully calls attention to the family names that symbolize the barrier to her love for Romeo. She says, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." If we call a rose a thorn, is it any less beautiful? Just because a rose has thorns, does that necessarily mean that it's bad or cursed or not worth our time and attention? What if we call the thorn a curse and the rose a blessing? Does that not signify that there is a blessing in disguise, a hidden blessing to be discovered, taking a chance for? You've probably all heard this Zen story, but I'm casting it in the light of today's service. The old farmer who worked his crops for many years, and his field horse runs away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors come to visit. To them, such bad luck, they say sympathetically. The farmer says, maybe. He's thinking to himself, it might turn out. Maybe there's a blessing in disguise. The next morning, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 more wild horses. How wonderful, the neighbors exclaimed. Now all of a sudden this is a blessing. Maybe, said the old man. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the untamed wild horses, was thrown, and broke his leg. The neighbors came again to offer their sympathy on his misfortune. Oh, what a terrible thing. Maybe, said the farmer. The day after, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. Seeing the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. The neighbors congratulated the farmer on how well things had turned out. Maybe, said the farmer. I come to church each week to be blessed. I seem to need a lot of blessing, frequently. Why is that? Well, in the course of daily living, I can easily forget that I have a huge bouquet of blessings already. My sons and daughter-in-law, my grandchildren, my health, my friends, flowers. Dr. Why should I be not looking at this? Why am I not thinking about these ordinary miracles that we have? But I can get overwhelmed with the tangled web we call life. Why is that? Well, we already heard what Dr. Rick Hansen had to say. He would say it was negativity bias that was taking over my brain and sabotaging my ability to be happy and more resilient in the face of curses, large and small, that we all experience in one way or another, every day, all the time, throughout life. I don't see all those blessings that are so abundant in my life, and what's worse, I don't go looking for them. And as Dr. Hansen mentions, in the wake of this brain anarchy, I lose patience easily. I'm anxious about things and even angry about little, non-consequential things. And if big things should arrive, then how vulnerable have I left myself by having lost my perspective? Friar Rohr would tell me that I have forgotten about original blessing. As I feel very connected to the natural world through plants and animals, he would have me remember Pelagius's concept of essential goodness of creation and rediscovering my capacity to glimpse the shafts of divine light that penetrate the thin veil dividing heaven and earth. And so I come to Horizon every Sunday. Horizon helps me remember all the goodness. Since being here with all of you, you have become flowers in my bouquet, in my huge bouquet of blessings. That reminds me that all is well and all will be well. This church and this faith replenishes my own sense of the goodness in the world and boosts my desire and ability to bring more good into the world, to bless it in gratitude for my being blessed. Mother Teresa has said, "Some people come into your life as blessings, some come in as lessons." She doesn't say curse. I would expand her thought to include not just people, but all things and occurrences that you experience. The lessons of life may be painful as thorns, but they help you to recognize the vast difference between that pain and the happiness of experiencing the gloriousness of the rose. That is a blessing. Like the poet Mary Oliver notes in her poem, The Uses of Sorrow, "Someone I love once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." Those hidden blessings in disguise. So don't fear the thorns. It's part of life. Take them in hand. It might hurt, but you'll be able to revel in the rose, and that's the important thing. May your bouquet of blessings ever blossom and delight you. Blessed be, and amen.